Hi, everyone. All right, we are live. Happy Tuesday, happy release date for NIGHTRENDER. I'm Lelia from One More Page Books. I'm so excited. Thank you, Amber, or someone for commenting. Just a sec. That's my slight technical difficulties, or it's because my laptop is 9 years old. I mean, it really could be either one. I'll just blame this dog that's sitting next to me. So thank you so much all for being here to celebrate, or for being wherever you are and for tuning into this. And if you're watching this after the fact, great, good for you, good call. And PSA, tell your friends, they can all watch this later as well. We have had the honor of hosting Jodi Meadows for several events at our store. Usually we get to celebrate together in person, but we're gonna do a special, exciting take it virtual, which I think is kind of fitting because of the essence of the reality in your book, sort of. So it's like, in a way, this makes sense, but in a way, it's less fun. So just imagine you're all eating chocolate and watching me do this live in person.
You have to imagine the chocolate. I don't imagine.
I don't want to imagine chocolate.
To imagine
so thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Like I said, we've done so many events with Jodi. Jodi's amazing. She writes these fabulous books. And I am so excited that this one is finally out in the world now. I don't know if you've seen the cover, everyone. I'm sure you have, but it's amazing. I brought a prop.
It's very shiny.
So there we go. I'm like, don't reflect. There it is. Okay. So yes, NIGHTRENDER. And we're so happy. Thank you so much to Lisa and Kristen for joining and for being here to celebrate with Jodi. I'm going to introduce them all. If you aren't familiar with them and their books, you should be. And also, please follow them all on social media and subscribe to their newsletters. Definitely recommend if they have one. I'm sorry. No, not that everyone needs to have a newsletter, but everyone keep up with what they're doing and read their books and buy their books. I'm going to put the link over there. So anyone who doesn't already have them or wants to gift them, you can get copies from One More Page. We're having some slight shipping delays, but don't worry, you'll get it soon and it'll be wonderful and fabulous. So keep that in mind. We'll have their backlist as well. Oh, Robin, so sad I couldn't make cupcakes. Thank you, Robin. Sorry. Oh my gosh, I could just read all these comments. You guys are fabulous. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to, because I've learned that I can't just ad lib, I'm going to read, the bios for these distinguished authors. So thank you all for tuning in here. We're going to go alphabetically. Kristen Bechara is the author of Vile Tears, which earned a starred review from both Kirkus and Shelf Awareness, amazing, and Relativity, both young adult novels. Kristen graduated with a BA in English from Kenyon College and earned her MFA in creative writing, poetry, from St. Mary's College of California. Over the years, she's worked as a freelance copywriter and has taught composition and fiction writing at the university level. These days, she lives and writes in Tampa, Florida with her husband, 2 girls, and 2 dogs. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Lisa Maxwell is the author of The Last Magician, The Devil's Thief, The Serpent's Curse, and Unhooked. She grew up in Akron, Ohio, and has a PhD in English. She's worked as a teacher, scholar, bookseller, editor, and writer. When she's not writing books, she's a professor at a local college. She lives in Virginia with her husband and 2 sons. You can follow her on Instagram at Lisa Maxwell YA, or sign up for her newsletter to learn more about her upcoming releases. I didn't even know that was coming, you guys. So I just talked about the newsletter thing on my own.
Very good.
And then excuse me, Jodi Meadows wants to be a ferret when she grows up, and she has no self-control when it comes to yarn, ink, or outer space. Still, she manages to write books. She is the author of the Incarnate Trilogy, the Orphan Queen Duology, the Fallen Isles Trilogy, and the NIGHTRENDER Duology. She is also, so you hear that, you guys? There's going to be a second one. Okay, sorry. Back to my written... She is also the co-author of New York Times bestsellers My Lady Jane, My Plain Jane, and other books in the Lady Janie series. She lives in rural Virginia. You can visit her at www.jodimeadows.com.
I also have a newsletter.
She also has a newsletter. Thank you. Exactly. Guys, newsletters are underrated. Low-key newsletters are my coping mechanism of 2022. Let's go.
What hurts my feelings a little bit is that no publisher will put that in the back flap of the book. So the wants to be a fair. Yeah, I don't know. It's a sad.
Oh, the fair. I thought you meant the newsletter part.
Oh no, they don't care about the newsletter. I think they support that. But as far as that bio, I don't know. Nobody wants to.
You're right. I'm looking at it now, and it does not mention ferrets.
I feel like you should get to pick your own bio.
I know. Well, I don't know. Maybe they were let's make it a little bit more professional. Come on. But I don't know. I still trick booksellers into reading it. So
I would be tricked by a ferret. Remember that? Didn't you have a ferret on the spine of one of the Lady Jane's ones?
Oh yeah, the first.
That was
my
incredible.
Lady Jane. Yeah, thank you. That was like one of the proudest days of my life.
I was gonna say probably the proudest moment. NIGHTRENDER has so many. Can I just say that the flap, the front flap, does include the phrase "serpent bride," which is my new favorite. Like, please, let's make. Like, could you have tank tops with that on it that we can all buy from like an Etsy shop, because amazing. It's multiple points of view. It's like it's so exciting, and I commend you for attempting this. The world that it's in, because it's so rad. Okay. I'm going to let you amazing authors discuss the ins and outs, and anyone who has a question that they would like to ask, please leave a comment and we'll be able to see those. And hopefully at the end, the authors will have time to maybe address some of those questions. So feel free, as things are going through, to leave a question there. And then, like I said, maybe at the end, the authors will have time to go through and check those. You guys have a lot of great comments. Thanks for all your support. And I'm going to leave the link in there for the page with all the books for you all to order them, for you, your friends and family, anybody really, strangers, whatever. It's a great gift.
Enemies. Yeah,
exactly. All right. And then I'll pop back on at the end. So I'll let you all take it away. Thank you so much for being here. I'm applauding you from my living room here.
I have a question about the ferrets before we start talking about books. Do you have
the ferrets? That sounds good.
We start with ferrets. Do you have a pet ferret?
I don't have pet ferrets anymore. I used to have pet ferrets, and they lived in this room, which has since been remodeled, which is why all my walls are still bare and everything, because ever since my furniture came in, it's been deadline on the book and promotion for this book. So I just have, it's not echoing anymore. So that's great. But yes, I used to have pet ferrets. I had a significant number of ferrets, what some might think of as an alarming number of ferrets at one time. And then tragically, they don't have super long lifespans. So I didn't have as many ferrets after a while. But the last ferret that I had, her name was Katniss. And she was just like her namesake, very fierce.
Nice. But you have cats now.
Yes, I have two cats, Hush and Hildy, and I don't know where they are. They were wandering in and out a little bit ago. Oh yeah, there's one. She just squeezed under the thing under there. Yeah, and they make trouble.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So how's the launch day been going? Like, have you been like glued to your computer?
Oh yes, glued to the computer. I went to the post office and paid my state taxes and like other fun launch day things. But yeah, I took. I have some art cards and some other goodies.
Oh, this is really cool.
This is
Hold those
down.
close. I'm trying to.
Okay.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And these will be coming with orders from One More Page. If you order the book from One More Page, these will be in there.
Very nice.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty much it. Like, it's one of the weird things about, launching a book during a pandemic, which I know you both understand, is just you by yourself for a significant portion of the day. And then like all of a sudden, oh yeah, I've got to put on makeup and look like a human for people on the internet.
So I noticed on your Instagram, I don't know, maybe it was today, like you posted something about how you got the idea for this book in 2006. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like so intrigued by that post because I was like, oh, like she's been thinking about this story for a long time. So I wanted to ask you about that because I feel like a lot of times people think, oh, an author has an idea for a book and then they sit down and they write the whole thing in 3 months. Voila, it's done. And like, the magic just happens like overnight. So I was excited that you wrote that post because I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I want to talk to Jodi about this because I feel like there are ideas that I've had that I'm still sitting on. I can't even remember, like you have like the hook or you have a scene. So can you like talk a little bit about like, the process and the idea and, the fact that this all started so long ago in your, in your imagination?
Yeah, definitely. I could see Lisa start to sweat. Like if you just write it in 3 months for Lisa.
I would die. Life would be to write lately.
It's not possible. It's,
Although The Devil's Thief was painfully close to that, so I don't
Yeah.
recommend it at all.
Yeah, no, I remember when you were writing that book.
So
You
bad.
looked very stressed out all the time. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've always done as a writer is like I write notes to myself to just keep ideas fresh, like, and whether it comes back or not, that just really depends. I honestly had no idea that this idea of, well, let me explain what Kristen's talking about. So I wrote earlier on Instagram that my original idea for NIGHTRENDER started in 2006. And it was really just like the image of a young woman waking up and in a tomb, and everything was like kind of spooky and weird. And there was a prince and a king, and they both expected her to perform some kind of task. And that's it. It's like 300 words of just this idea of a person waking up with not much of an idea of what's supposed to be happening right now. And obviously that has changed since I started working on NIGHTRENDER, and the character is different, the circumstances are different. But this image to me of somebody waking up in this dire circumstance of like the world being so strange and foreign to her suddenly was really powerful to me. And then I put it away for like 10 years with nothing to do. And that's what I've done with a lot of ideas. I just write down what I have. If I have a scene, I'll write that down. If I have an idea or some kind of conflict, I write that down. And then one day, maybe I come back to it. My first book, Incarnate, I did the same thing, mirrored. You can see the cover back there. Also started in 2006. That must have been a good year for me.
that was
I
the
had
ideas, the year of ideas.
Yeah, I had the idea for Incarnate in 2006, and then I put it down and didn't work on it until 2009, when it became, the sort of the book that it is, and then sold later. So for NIGHTRENDER, what I had was obviously not enough for a story, but I came back to it when I was thinking about how I wanted to write a fast-paced adventure book about a champion, about a warrior who was committed to fighting evil or doing something. And I didn't exactly know how it was going to fit in there until I started writing the book, and I realized, oh, she's been sleeping all this time while the three kingdoms that are at war have been doing what they do, and then I'm going to get to write the scene of her waking up. Just chapter 5. I think it's still chapter 5. I don't know. Things change.
So can I ask, what was so compelling about the image that made you come back to it for that? Like, what was it about that little tiny spark of an idea that was like enough that not only you put it away, but you remembered where it was? Because that is a big problem of mine. I do not remember where I put things, and then they're gone.
I understand this problem too. I think in some ways it's kind of like a really powerful dream that you can't really explain, this like strong emotion that you have attached to it, that like whatever you were feeling during the dream, it was so real, so vivid. And so in some ways it's kind of like that, but also for the character who's NIGHTRENDER in this book, it was her loneliness and sense of abandonment and just this uncertainty that really felt so strong and real and relatable, especially, as I came back to it for teen readers. All the feelings are just so strong, and when you're a teenager, and I think sometimes whether or not teens actually are abandoned or whatever, it's easy to feel that way. So yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And then some of the other early ideas. Did you guys? I don't know. Do you guys ever play video games? Are you giant nerds?
My
like me?
kids try to make me, and I'm so bad at it. Like I played two, and one of them is Animal Crossing. I don't know if
Nice.
it even counts.
I think
I
it
do have a
counts.
Switch, so to play
Okay.
Animal Crossing. Because
Nice. What about you, Kristen?
I have like phases that I'll go through. There was a game. It was like, do you guys remember Myst? That's like ancient.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so there was another one that I played more recently, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was kind of like the same, like you had to figure out like what cords were attached to, and it led you through rooms, and you had to like figure out the mechanisms and push buttons and stuff. Oh, I wish I could remember the name of it. But yeah, so those are the kind of games that I like to play if I play, where like you have to like figure out a world's mechanisms, and like you go from room to room. Or I think Myst was islands. I can't remember now.
I think it was. I wasn't good at it, so I didn't ever make it very far. But yeah, it was. I do think it was islands. I remember being just like astounded by the graphics.
Yeah,
it was late 90s.
Yeah. So. Totally, I know. I'm like dating myself, but yeah, that was an amazing game though. Yeah. Oh, somebody else remembers it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. So one of the games that I think probably informed some of the earlier ideas for NIGHTRENDER was the Elder Scrolls Morrowind. I don't know if you guys ever played that one.
I've heard of it.
You've probably heard of Skyrim, which is more recent, even though it's 10 years old and we're never getting a sequel ever. But Morrowind was one of the earlier games, and it was also one of the ones that was like, all the graphics are amazing, and every rock was handcrafted by these designers. Right. I think that's like actually something that they were very proud of and talked about. But there's one area on the island of Morrowind where it's like in the center of the island, it's gated off by like this giant fence that somehow holds in all of these like flying blighted creatures. I was never quite sure why they didn't just fly over the fence. It was a fence. But inside was this like super scary area where all of these blighted creatures and monsters would fight, and I never made it to the end of the game. I got lost exploring. But it was just like red and scary, and everything seemed a lot harder. All the monsters were a lot more powerful than me. Oh, it's a cat. It's Hush. Anyways, I loved this idea of this place, off limits place in the center of the island where they were, and I wanted it. So in NIGHTRENDER, on the continent of Salvation, there is a place in the center of their continent that is off limits. It's a dome, so nothing can fly out. I fixed it. Elder Scrolls can just write me that check any day now. And in the Malice, which is what the central part is called, that is where all of the Rancor live. It's holding it. It's like hiding this portal between worlds, and there's like a demon plane that the portal shoots out in the Malice. And so the Malice is basically the part that's of their real world that's been taken over by the demon creatures. It's very scary. Trust me. I feel like I'm not explaining that super well.
I actually love that, because like I feel like as authors we get that question like, oh, what other books inspired you, or what inspired, and like sometimes it's games or like art or something completely like that's just not unexpected. So I love that, because I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say that they were influenced by it, because those worlds are so richly developed too. Like the world building in those games is amazing.
Yeah. I did not handcraft every rock in my book, though.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to tell people that. You're just supposed to let them assume you did.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Get back to work.
Totally are handcrafted. Every book.
I handcrafted the trees.
Right.
Definitely, for sure.
Super cool.
Are
Though.
there other things that you look to or that were inspirations that readers might know of that inspired the book other than the video game that you pulled in?
I think those were probably my main, like the main things that I can trace back to, like having an origin point. So I think so often when somebody asks you, where do you get your ideas? There's just like, I don't know. Which is absolutely how I feel about like the Fallen Isles books. I've got no idea where those came from. I don't know. I'm just glad the ideas happened. But for this one, I felt really lucky. I was like, oh, I have a story for this one. I know at least one place where it came from.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we get parts and pieces from everywhere, you know, like you just pick up like elements along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. So I have a question too from like following you on Instagram. Everyone needs to follow Jodi on Instagram if you don't already. You know, cats and knitting, right? It's not crocheting because I always get them mixed up. It's knitting, right?
It's knitting. I do crochet, but I mostly knit.
Okay. So like I was wondering about that too. Like, is that something for you that's like an escape from writing, like to get your, like to clear your mind? Or do you like find yourself like working out like plot problems or like ideas as you knit? Like, I was just kind of curious, like how that sort of plays into your creative life.
Oh, that's an amazing question. Both, I think. It depends what I'm knitting, for one thing. Some things are easier to knit than others. For example, like if I'm knitting a hat, where's my hat? I knit this hat while I was working on Dawnbreaker edits. Dawnbreaker is the sequel to NIGHTRENDER. And this is a very simple, straightforward hat. The goal of it was to just keep my hands busy and not pick up my phone or look at Instagram or social media or anything, so that I could keep my mind on my book, but not be bored staring at the wall or spying on my neighbors. This is my other thing that I do. If I'm knitting something a little bit more demanding or frustrating, then that usually takes all of my focus. And I like to knit those for the same reason. I like to write hard books. I don't know, this seems like this is going to be really horrible. I'm going to knit it. It's in like super fine cobweb yarn. It's got lots of holes. Yeah, I find myself very attracted to those. I did knit this, which if we had been able to do this in person, it's upside down. If we had been able to do this in person, we'd have this at the store.
Oh, cool.
But it's giant wings. And I knit a bunch of these. I've knit 2 for myself so far. And this was one of the stressful projects, but I also am very proud of it. And this one, I also spun the yarn for it. Not on this spinning wheel, but oh, hey, Hush.
That's about to use the spinning wheel. Like,
yeah, she's about to do something. Oh, she might be coming over here. But on a different spinning wheel, because as you might have noticed, I really like yarn. I've got to have something else in my life that's not books, but is also creative and does the same kind of thing. And it when I take pictures and post them on Instagram and stuff, it does add kind of a nice visual thing. Like, look, I'm making a thing that you can see, not just like once a year or once every couple of years. Here's my book.
So Robin in the comments has a comment about her favorite concept that you've ever expressed is that the bad guy or abuser will never be the love interest during a talk for As She Ascends, and it's really stuck with her. So I'm not sure if you are able to do the comments, but it seemed like a nice comment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is definitely one thing that I still believe in for my own writing. I can't tell other writers what to do or what they should do. But I find myself not wanting to write the bad guy as a love interest. And I know that's sometimes frustrating to readers because they're like, oh, he's so hot though. He's so dreamy. He's so sarcastic. Like, okay, but he still wants to murder you. In the book that Robin's talking about, like, okay, but he's still an abuser. So I don't want those to be romantic interests in my books. I would prefer to write about nice relationships. Everything else can be terrible, but the relationships can be nice.
So I want to ask you about just the kind of narrative of this book. Like, I loved it. And one of the things I really loved about it is it does what I like in books, which is makes you work for a little bit by having those different point of views that weave in and out of each other so that you really get to know the characters. So can you talk a little bit about like why you chose the point of views you chose, what that process was like? Because I know in my own writing, I do the same. I mean, I just keep adding them, which is a problem. But
yeah. So for NIGHTRENDER, at first, I really just had the NIGHTRENDER's point of view. And then I thought, well, she is kind of this like alien. Here comes a cat. She is kind of this, alien, otherworldly figure who does not interact with humans very well. She's kind of socially incompetent. And I thought that might be a difficult point of view to stay in. It might be difficult for readers to connect with her for, all gajillion pages that this book is going to be. So, all right, let's get some humans in here. So I added Rune and Han, who are the human points of view in this. They are each from different kingdoms, and I chose each of them because they're from the different kingdoms, and they can show what's going on in their own kingdoms. They can show like what's normal, what their cultures are like, what their beliefs are like. So it gave, not only did it help balance out NIGHTRENDER's kind of otherworldliness, but it was also a vehicle to be able to show more of the world building, since NIGHTRENDER was not going to be able to be everywhere, and she wasn't going to have all of the background in the kingdoms that people who live there would.
I find the same thing, right? So in The Last Magician, I had to invent, it was only supposed to be 2 point of views. And by the end, I think it was like 5 or 6, because it was the only way I could get the world building out without just, okay, here's 20 pages of info dump. So you know what happened 100 years ago. So you understand.
Right.
It. But by having those other points of views, it gives you a different sense of the world. So talk to us a little bit about your world building. Like, what was your favorite part of this world? What are the parts you hope readers love? What were the hardest parts to kind of develop and build?
So one of the things that I was just so grateful that my editor was like, do more, was how weird this book is and how weird the world building gets to be. So in NIGHTRENDER, there are places called malsites, sites of malice, and they're basically just like weird. Come on, brain, work with me. I don't know, it's gone. Just weird little pockets of bad energy, and strange things happen there. So one that you see early on in the book is a time slip where Han gets trapped, and for her, time is moving much more quickly than it is for everybody else. And she's trapped there, she can't get out. Seems like a really bad situation for her. But through her, you get to watch the other people move very slowly, looking for her, trying to rescue her. They can't. There's also forests that burn forever until somebody, probably the NIGHTRENDER, will put them out, or places where gravity is not relevant anymore, places where the atmosphere, basically just the laws of physics, no longer apply. And that was really fun. And I loved being able to use what was in those Malsites and the strange effects that they had on the world as part of the plot for the book. And yeah, I think that's it. Like, just how weird this book is and how weird it gets to be. Because I've always felt like I have to like simplify. Not with this book, which is also one of the really hard things about this book, is just like it's very complicated and there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things to keep in mind. So like the amount of like sweating that I do over like, oh no, have I forgotten something? Or am I lining up all of the different plot lines? Well, that kind of thing. It's like, it's the best part, but it's also the hardest part. Let's see what they're doing in here. Oh, Sarah wants to know about the art prints. Yes. My friend Robert drew these, and I think he did a really good job. If you look in the sword, you can see the rancor reflected in the sword. I know, it's so cool. And that's pretty much the story of the art cards, except for how hard it was to get them.
Yeah. Can I ask a question about the ending without like giving anything away? So it's a cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious, like, how did you decide to end it there? Like, because I'm assuming, like, I don't know, I'm making an assumption, so you can tell me if I'm wrong, or maybe I don't know how much you want to give away, but like, is the second book going to pick up right where we leave off? I was just curious about like why there. And did you make like a decision based on, was it just like mechanical, like the book's long enough, we need to like cut it off here and we'll continue in book 2? Like, I was just very curious about like the decision for where it ended.
So originally, something even worse happened at the end of the book. And for those like fun logistical reasons, I couldn't make it work ultimately. But the characters were all in the same places that they are and in similar situations. But yeah, I had this like idea of how bad it's going to get for one particular character in the end of the book, and where the second book might pick up. The title is Dawnbreaker. You can do it that way with what you will.
So did you have that second book already plotted or drafted before you finalized the first one, so that you kind of really knew that that ending was gonna... Are you smarter than I am? Did you plan ahead so that you didn't want to go back and you couldn't? No, kidding.
No, I often do wish that I could go back in time and tinker a little bit more.
Right, always.
Yeah, like I still have it in the Scrivener. I could go back.
Don't touch it. You can't go back
for myself.
No. Don't touch it.
But yeah, so like part of it was that I had a very particular ending in mind for one character, and where the other characters would be, that ending is slightly different than it originally was, but things are still pretty bad. As you said, it's a cliffhanger. But mostly I think I choose to end books where they resolve something significant. So I'm trying to figure out like how much is a spoiler to say. But it's like, so a character has a goal. So NIGHTRENDER has a goal. By the end of the book, she has to either achieve that goal of doing something, going somewhere, or get farther away from it in a significant manner that is satisfying and upsetting to the reader. And in NIGHTRENDER, she does. And other characters have other goals or arcs that they need to complete things they need to do in order to achieve some sort of character growth, and they do those things, and it can make the situation worse. It's very vague. I'm so sorry.
It's actually explaining it really, really well without giving anything away.
Right. And plus, I think like this is a good question, a follow-up. Did you intend in the comments, did you intend for there to be a main character, or is it more each reader will identify with one, and who that is might change from time to time? So I think that might have something that like would tie in with like the idea of whose arc is complete by, or how maybe you determine that like that was a good place to end it based on one character's arc, or all three.
I think they all three have to complete an arc of some sort in order to be really satisfying to the reader, even though it's a cliffhanger. But I don't think that I really intended readers to have one favorite character or all the favorite characters. I've been really interested to find out who readers like the best. There are people who like Han the best, and they're very passionate about how much they like her the best. There are people who hate her, like actually hate her. And they really like Rowan and NIGHTRENDER the best, or one or the other. Those two I think are pretty evenly split. And I think sometimes people they like the character they think is making the right choice, or the choice they would want to make. So the characters are all different enough that I'm hoping that readers will find at least one to identify with and just not hate the other ones. I like Han. I would not make the choices she makes, but I really like her. She's a super fun. Yeah, she's very fun to write.
Yeah, I could see that.
But yeah, I think that was a really good question, Robin. I see Sarah asking if I listened to the audiobook. I listened to the sample of it just this morning. This is the first time I got to hear it. But I really liked the sample that I heard, which was strangely from Han's point of view. It's chapter 3, at least part of it. And I thought she did a really incredible job. I had not heard anything that this narrator narrated before. But I was really happy when I listened to the samples of her other work. And when I heard the sample of NIGHTRENDER this morning, I thought it was really fantastic.
That's great. You liked it.
Yeah. It's always a little bit scary, right?
It's weird. The first time I ever heard an audiobook, I couldn't, because I was like, that's not the way it sounds in my head. So I can't, you're saying it wrong. And they're not, they're fine. It's just not what's in my head. So it's great that you liked it.
I haven't had an audiobook for any of my solo books since Incarnate. I've had audiobooks for all the Jane books, which has been great, but I've been very sad that I haven't had audiobooks for my solo books. I think they're very important, for accessibility, but also just because they're fun to listen to while you do other things. So I was just overjoyed when I got a note saying that we were going to have audiobooks for these. I know a lot of people like to listen to audiobooks, so yeah. So what are you guys working on and stuff? You seem really quiet. You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
I'm in the middle of edits for the 4th Last Magician book called The Shattered City. So
nice.
That's what I've been doing, is reading through it and trying to not make it suck. Make it nonsense. Something like that. Yeah.
Always a great goal. How big is it going to be?
It's so big.
Yeah. Is it going to take the whole half of my shelf?
I'm going to set a 150,000 word goal, and I blew past that once again. So it'll be like 700 pages again.
How many words are the other books?
The Last Magician's like 130. And then The Devil's Thief was like 230, because I don't know what happened. And then The Serpent's Curse was just over 200. And this one will be longer than I wanted it to be, but it needs to be, because I'm like I think I'm up to like 8 or 9 POV characters.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like the secondary characters, it's kind of become more like an Outlander kind of thing, where the secondary characters have now they have major plots that all have to be resolved. Plus
Those
time travel.
jerks.
Don't ever, just don't.
I will never forget your warning.
I mean, to
Don't
be
write
fair,
time-
my
don't write
husband
time
told me you
travel.
shouldn't do time travel. This is a terrible idea. And he was right, but it also hit the times list. So was he
Yeah.
right? He was right.
He was a time traveler.
Yeah, no,
Time
it's
traveler from the future telling you, don't do this to yourself,
so
but
bad.
it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time travel.
But
Any time travel book, anything. It's so tricky.
mhm.
He's
It's
just having this-
luckily I have like the most brilliant editor. She's so smart and catches all the mistakes. And it's great because like, I don't know, did you guys see Avengers Endgame?
Yes.
And then I immediately emailed her and I was like, so the bar got really low just now. Because none of that made any sense. It was like, yes.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's awesome. What about you, Kristen? Anything that you can talk about yet, or?
I'm working on a YA sci-fi that is set in Florida in the near future with when I tell people like it's Black Mirror-ish, but I don't know if everybody knows what Black Mirror is. There's so much content now. It's Netflix, it's like technology gone wrong. So it's the blurring of reality and virtual reality. So it's part wilderness survival story and part, I guess, technology survival story, like those two
Love
worlds
it.
colliding. Yeah. So that is what I'm working on.
So good.
How about you, Jodi? Are you done with Dawnbreaker and working on something new? Or are you still working on Dawnbreaker?
So technically I'm supposed to be done with Dawnbreaker, but I don't know that I will ever be done with it. Not really. It's kind of that that part where you're just like, I want to turn in the book, but I also don't want to because
Yeah.
I know there's more things that I could be doing to make it better. But anyway, I also do need to like take it off my slate for a little while and work on the third Mary book. So that's coming up. And
Which one is that? Which is the third Mary book that's coming up? I feel like it's been so long since I've talked to you. I've like lost.
Yeah.
What
So
happened in 2019 or 2020 or 2021 really? So
yeah, no, nothing really big happened in those years.
nothing.
So the next Mary book is Imaginary Mary about Ada Lovelace and Mary Shelley.
What?
I say Ada
Okay, I've
Lovelace
not heard of
first
this. This
because
one is amazing.
Oh,
That
thank
sounds
you.
so good.
And they build a robot.
That sounds perfect.
Yeah.
100% on board with that.
Mm-hmm. And that one will be out this summer. And the next Mary book is still top secret.
Cool.
But
You'll tell me later. Like
I will tell you later. Yeah. After we're done here and there's nobody watching us, I'll tell you.
Okay, but the Mary Shelley, and that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
With a robot? Yeah, it's really been a long time since I've talked to you because I don't remember hearing about that one.
Mm-hmm. It's an automaton, technically, but
I mean, obviously.
he does a little dance called the robot.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You've made good life choices.
I like to think so.
Avoiding time travel, robots to dance.
Mm-hmm.
And ferrets. We need
And
some
ferrets, yeah. So let's look and see if there's any other comments. And hey,
I came back to someone to ask a question, and I thought it'd be weird if I just typed it into the comments. so here I am. This is maybe like too broad of a question, but it's so interesting to me. Like I'm listening to you all talk about and like the way that your books, so Lisa and Kristen, like your books both have like a reality that's based in our like actual reality component, but also like a magic or a mythology component. And then Jodi, you've written both. Like you've written just fantasy and you've written contemporary or historical with like elements that are slightly other. So I'm curious, what's harder? Is it harder to keep all the stuff in your book in line with like what's true of our world? Like oh, he's in New York City and he's got to get from here to there, so that many blocks would be a 20-minute walk? Or is it harder to keep your own like magical rules in alignment when you're writing a story or fantasy world or whatever the things that you've created yourself? Like, which of those is more challenging for you as a writer?
Yes. All of those.
I think the magic, for me, it's the magical, like keeping all of the rules straight. Because the rest of it you can Google. like, oh, how many blocks is this? I'm just kind of
Sometimes you can Google. Sometimes.
Can you imagine trying to like write historical or things set in different locations before the Google?
I don't know how people did it. Like,
I
mean,
barely
did
remember
my
how I drove anywhere
dissertation before Google, and that was hard because it was pretty archival. I don't know how people wrote historical fiction. The amount of effort it had to have taken to go into archives that are now all digitized, that I don't have to have a giant travel budget.
Yeah.
To be able to, to get floor plans and maps and old trolley system maps. And I have no idea. Yeah, microfiche, but you still have to go to those libraries. Like, not every library has those things. So like when I was doing my dissertation, I had to travel to like Southern Illinois University. Like, who goes there except they had one collection I needed, right? Or you had to go to Boston, and that stuff took money. So yeah, Google's amazing.
Yeah.
But you still need, I still like, my husband, his college has a better library than mine does. So he's like my research assistant because I can get so much more than college because it's a research university instead of the college I teach at.
Is that why you married him? You can be honest with us. It's okay.
I mean, I married him a long time ago, so it was for the money, really.
Before you needed an annual.
We had an excuse to travel. No, you didn't have any money.
Yeah.
When you're writing a book or you're a poor grad student, you don't have money. Like, that is not the traveling you want to do. So
I think they're both really hard. Like, in some ways, I think trying to ground something in reality, whether it's modern or historical, you do have to look that stuff up. You can't just like make it up or see if it works within your rules. Yep. And the rules of the real world are a lot more complicated than fantasy rules. Like,
unless you're doing time travel.
Unless you're doing time travel, in which case you have time traveled into making yourself miserable for several years. I'm so sorry, Lisa.
Yeah, mistakes were made. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, it was actually a trick question. The correct answer was the hardest thing ever is to write time travel.
Yeah, just throwing that out there in case anybody has dreams of grandeur.
But in fantasy, it is up to you whether or not your rules are fairly straightforward. Like a simple rule is like the Lady Jane books. Either you turn into an animal or you don't. Those are really easy rules. And I think that part was much easier than like digging through all of the like historical stuff that we needed to either figure out whether we were going to keep or whether we were going to say we didn't like it and acknowledge it and then throw it away, which is one of the benefits of writing funny, fake historical.
I'm just imagining you all. There's not a difference though, right? Like when I'm writing the fantasy part, like once the rule is made, it is real and it has to be real to me or it doesn't work. So then
that's true.
You know what I mean? Like even when I did Unhooked, that was Peter Pan, but I was like, no, I'm basing it off of Peter Pan and Neverland's a place. Because I had a source tag. So it was like real, right? So
no, that's true.
The best magic, you have to write it like it's real. So then those lines are really blurred.
Definitely. Yeah. And I do think that like it can be very difficult to find like how exactly does like this particular small thing work in your fantasy land too. Yeah. And it does help to ground those in some sort of reality also, so that they feel more real to the reader. Like, kingdoms work and monarchies work in the same way that they do, or have in the real world.
Right. Yeah, because the fantasy world in Vial of Tears was based on the Phoenician civilization. So I kind of sort of cheated a little bit with the world building. Not cheated, but like I had a blueprint there somewhat.
Mhm.
So I did a lot of research to figure out like the material culture, the architecture, the food, the clothing, everything that I could possibly find out about that civilization and their mythology. So I had that like as an underlying base for my world building. So it was kind of a weird blend. Like I didn't completely make everything up. There was a lot that was there that I tried to mine for information.
Mhm. I think you pulled that off very successfully. It felt very real and very established as a place.
Yeah. I think it's all in the details, personally, the world building. Like down to the food. There was a lot of food in my book.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
hungry.
That's great. Well, I think we probably have time for maybe one more question. And it looks like Sarah has left one in the comments. Thank you to everybody, by the way, who left questions. And thank you all so much for leaving such wonderful comments and stuff during the conversation. For all the authors, did the last couple of years influence how you view writing, humanity, or your books? Wow, it's a big one, Sarah.
I know.
I'll let you
Sarah's
take that, Jodi.
Thank you.
It's all you.
Yes, in some ways. You know, as far as you know, this pandemic life that we live now, it did make me think about how stubborn people can be, and you know, for both good and bad, and how far people will go for what they believe in, and how that can work in my book, and how I can like now the way that the characters act, like, well, here's some real life examples. They're real people, totally made up people who act like real people.
Yeah, but my Vial of Tears was pretty much done. I'm trying to remember the timing because it was postponed because of COVID. The release date was delayed like 6 months. So I don't think I was doing any revision, maybe some revision work during pandemic time. Yeah, I guess I was doing some revision work, but the book I'm working on now, definitely like, I don't know. I love a good dystopian though. So Station 11, you know, so I don't know. I guess have always gravitated toward those stories anyway, because I feel like, I don't know, my mind's always on the future. I'm always thinking about like what's next, maybe because I have kids and, you know, you do tune into the news. There's a lot to think about. So the book I'm working on now is more like climate change based and technology, like that's intended for good, but doesn't necessarily work out that way. It's hard not to think about those things now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not in the same way for me in terms of like how it's influenced me. I think it's more that, you know, before the pandemic hit, I was like really hustling. I mean, I'm a full-time professor with 2 kids and writing, you know, 700-page books that my publisher wanted like 1 a year and making myself sick in the process. And it was like this giant wake-up call that like, what the heck are you doing? So that's why there's a 2-year gap between the 3rd and the 4th book. I was just like, nope, not doing it. Like, I mean, during the pandemic, we ended up homeschooling my youngest. My oldest was starting a new high school. I was trying to teach online virtual students who were in crisis. I was like, the writing was important, but the hustle stopped being as important. And I don't know what that'll do to my career, but honestly, like, I mean, it's going to be what it is at this point, because I think that's what changed, is this kind of idea that I could somehow claw my way ahead. But like, how are you going to get ahead when you can't get out of your house? Like, you know.
Well, whenever the last book comes out, even if it's 2 years from now or 4 years from now, or time travel from now, this fall.
Yes, it's done. It's just getting edited.
Well, Well, I'm still going to buy a copy, and I'll probably display it next to your other giant books on my shelf.
Thanks. It makes a lovely doorstop.
Yes.
A lot.
I feel like we haven't talked at all about like really what your books are about. Can we maybe tell the people, give the people like a quick summary of your books? Both of your books. Wait, which I don't know the mirror.
So Jodi and I have the same publishing house, the same editor, and that's how we connected. We've done a couple things together now. My book is, it came out in October. It's about two sisters who end up in the Phoenician underworld because of a magical ancient coin that their great-grandfather sends to them. And they have to battle their way out and navigate shapeshifters and liars and thieves and all kinds of monsters. So it's about hope and the thin line between life and death. It's a pretty scary place down there. And it was inspired by my family's stories because I'm half Lebanese. So it was inspired by an actual coin collection that my great-grandfather had that he found in Lebanon. They were Roman and Greek coins. They're about 2,000 years old. We still have them. My grandmother's recipes are in there. That's the Phoenician food is inspired by my family's recipes. So yeah.
That sounds really cool.
Really
so the Last Magician series, which is the series I'm working on now, it's about a time-traveling thief named Estefalosik who has to go back to turn of the century New York to stop a magician from destroying a book that could save magic. And there's angry kissing, which is nice. But the kissing gets less angry as the series goes. So
excellent. Yeah. Well, you've really got that pitch down to a.
I mean, the books are long. The pitch I can like. I have to convince people that I do know how to tell a story. If I pitch for like my books, they'd be like, "Oh Lord, no."
Well, they're wonderful books, and everybody should read both of your books.
And you can order all of their books from One More Page. I think the link is probably still up there at the very first comment, or one of the first comments that I linked to. Go to the event page, which has all their books. And yeah, if you're a patient, you can have a signed one. And we appreciate all of you authors, all the time that you've spent. I mean, the time that it takes to write a book alone, I'm just in awe of, let alone then you have to like actually like do events about it. Send book plates in our case, or, just like editing, literally just every aspect. Also, feeding yourself and your family in the meantime so that you continue to like exist to write more books is just wild to me. So thank you so much for creating these worlds with all this amazing magic and characters that we can read. And I mean, I'm sure I'm not speaking just for myself when I say that, like when things are especially like, in the real world, it really is so beautiful to just get lost in the stories that you all write. So thank you so much for doing that. And then thank you for being here. That was what I was really going to say. And I started that sentence was thank you for being here and talking about your books on this panel with us. Again, I give you my home round of applause without waking the dog next to me. And yes, Sarah says thank you as well. Thank you to everyone who's watching and anyone who might watch later. And thank you to everyone who orders a book. And thank you to the Academy. And really, just everyone just on a roll with gratitude. So if any of you all have any closing thoughts or anything, please feel free to share it. Like I said, One More Page is really grateful to all of you. We wish you all the chocolate and success and work-life balance.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming. I see like my mom and my friends in there. Hi, friends.
Hi, Jodi's mom.
Sister.
Hi, Jodi's sister. I see some other authors too, which is always so cool when I see like, oh my gosh, that's like another author who's like tuning into this author's event. So anyway, shout out to them as well. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Congratulations.
See you all for the next ones. No pressure, no rush.